Okay, so I'm Denise Brown. My book is I Am Winter, which is a young adult thriller. It's about a teenager called Summer, and I guess the clue is in the title. Her name is Summer, but the book is I Am Winter. So she feels unloved. Her best friend dies after they've taken drugs, and it's all about her kind of survivor guilt, and how she deals with being left alone. She feels like she's on her own, so it's just dealing with how she copes with the tragedy, basically.
Yeah. What do you think was there a defining moment that led you to writing I Am Winter? Was there like a main seed of inspiration that kind of developed into the story, or?
Yes, my writing is always character led rather than plot driven. And I basically woke up with Summer in my head one day. She was about 12 at the time. I know that sounds like she is real to me. She was about 12, and it was her birthday party, and she was dressed like she was going into a nightclub at 12 years old. Sorry, my computer's still playing up. And she just looked really awkward. You know, she had skinny legs, and she just looked like this little girl who had been told to be a grown-up. But she wasn't ready to be a grown-up because she still hadn't been a child. And it just kind of developed from there. And the bear wolf that she uses as a coping mechanism in the book just really followed on really quickly. You know, I just connected the two. He was there as well. Well, she was there. And I lived in an area that was very similar to where the book is set. And it just made sense that she would escape to the woods, you know, to find some comfort there.
With obviously the book itself kind of looks at quite tough and kind of complicated topics to do with grief, and how, especially when you're growing up, you can kind of deal with those emotions, or how difficult it is to deal with those emotions.
Yeah.
How important do you think it is to kind of have these kinds of stories in the YA world?
I think it's what it's all about, to be honest. I think what I really like about young adult literature, because I read a lot of it and I tend to only write for young adults, but what I really like about it is the fact that young adults are still developing, they're still finding themselves, and they're still completely molded by what goes on around them, you know, their lifestyle, their background, school, friends. And I think that that's what young adult literature is about. It's about them molding to become the people that they will be when they're adults. And I think you can do so much with young adult literature. I think, you know, you're not prettying it up the way it may be done when you're writing for adults, because young adults are open to learning about this stuff. You know, they're open to reading about it, and it's how they grow. And yeah, I just love it.
Definitely. I think YA is always kind of ahead of the curve when it comes to kind of dealing with different topics and dealing with them in a really kind of emotional but accessible way as well. Like YA never seems scared to kind of take the risk, if that makes sense.
No, that's right. You're not pussyfooting around anything. You're just telling it like it is, because young adults can deal with that, actually. They take it all on board, don't they? And yeah, it's how they grow.
Definitely. With obviously the book, kind of we follow Summer, and obviously she experiences the loss of her friend. How important do you think it was to kind of have those kind of elements in there, the little sections that just kind of described how important Cece was kind of before all this happened? Do you think it really helped kind of explore the emotions further throughout the novel and explain why they were so kind of heartfelt?
Yes, definitely, because obviously C doesn't really play a huge part in the story itself. So you kind of taking Summer's word for it that she was her best friend. So I liked the flashbacks, just as a way of kind of drip feeding the way the two of them came together, the way the two of them kind of depended on each other, really, because neither of their home lives were particularly nice. You know, I mean, Summer loves her mum, but she needed more than she was getting, and I think the flashbacks just kind of completed the picture. You know, painted the whole picture of their friendship.
Yeah,
Because they were basically like kindred spirits.
definitely. I think they worked really well as well, because it kind of kept reminding me as a reader that when you are going through things like guilt and grief, these memories are always going to pop back up and kind of resurface as you're kind of dealing and going through the emotions. So I think they worked really well, not only as a reader to kind of get more of an understanding of the relationship between the two characters, but to kind of mirror real life and the kind of grieving process, if that makes
yeah 100%. Yeah, she was definitely going through the cycle, Summer, of grieving, and you know, different emotions playing out.
Yeah, definitely. I think you can't help but feel for her.
That's good.
Yeah. It's good. It's an emotional ride as a reader, but she is someone that you can kind of really connect with. I mean, when it comes to her as a character, obviously you mentioned that when you first kind of met her, she was 12. How do you think he was able to kind of capture her voice so well? Because I think the novel, you can really sense through reading it who she kind of is as a person, and kind of she's really relatable as being a kind of young adult in the world. I was wondering if you like had anything in particular, like any particular thing that you did to try and kind of communicate that, or if it was kind of subconscious maybe.
It was probably subconscious. I have 5 children, 4 of them are girls. So I've always got kind of teenagers and youngsters around. I think with Summer, she lived in my head for quite a while before the book became what it is now. So she did become real. I know it makes me sound a little bit mad, but she did become real. I kind of felt at the end that I knew her like I knew my own daughters. So I could hear her voice as well when I was writing. So it was very easy to capture her personality. My daughters and I, like my youngest daughters, we lived, as I said, in an area very similar to where the book is set. So I've seen a lot of teenagers sort of pass through my daughter's lives. And she wasn't, Summer wasn't based on a particular person, but she was kind of a collective of the girls in that area. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But she definitely had a voice in my head, definitely. So it was kind of like watching her react and then writing down what she said, rather than me writing it down and then fitting the voice to that.
Yeah. So with that in mind, when you was kind of writing the novel, did you kind of have a end spot in mind, or was it just following Summer and seeing where it led throughout the writing process?
Yeah, it was pretty much following her. It went through a few rewrites, to be honest. So it started off quite differently to how it ended. But I hadn't actually envisaged that end. When I wrote the first sentence, I had no idea that was where it was going to end. But it just kind of made sense, you know, with Summer, the way she used to steal things from her mum, especially, and her gran and other people. It just kind of made sense that was what she would do. And I hadn't even intended, to be perfectly honest, that she would be so attached to her baby brother either. So she kind of did that as well. But I liked that. You know, again, that all kind of fell into place as I was writing.
Yeah, I think it's always really interesting when like a character kind of grabs you so much that it's kind of up to them what happens, and you just kind of have to follow their choices and see where they get.
Yeah, to be honest, when I started writing I Am Winter, I wasn't very good at planning what I was writing. I would just literally have this idea, have this character, and away I would go. I do try and plan a lot more now, but I do find that you're never going to stick to it. You know, you can outline a book, and that is never how it's going to go from start to finish, because a character will come in and do something that you hadn't seen before or you didn't expect them to do, and that's the best way for it to evolve, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that is what made it the story that it is, you know, basically just letting Summer do what she had to do.
Yeah, definitely. What was I gonna say? My brain's just gone. When it comes to obviously I Am Winter, was the title always there, or was that something that was decided afterwards?
It was decided.
I find it quite interesting, obviously, with the title being what it is and Summer being called Summer.
Yeah.
Without giving too much away.
I can't actually hold my hands up and say that I came up with the title, because I didn't. It started off, the bear wolf actually started off as a bear dog when I had the original thought. And I just called it's like working title was bear dog. And I was sending it out, I was submitting it to publishers, and another publisher before #press showed an interest in it, and they didn't like the title, and we kind of put our heads together and they came up with I Am Winter. And as soon as I heard it, it was just like, why didn't I think of that? So yes, I didn't come up with that, but I'm very grateful that they did.
Yeah, it is a very good title. I think it works really well, especially once you've kind of read the book. It's a very apt title without saying too much. I don't want to obviously give away the book at all. So we do have some questions from the YA group in store.
Okay.
And the first one is, I always find a very interesting one, and that is, have you always wanted to be an author, or is it something you've explored as you've kind of grown?
I wouldn't say I've always wanted to be an author, but that is purely because growing up, being an author was never something that I would have considered doing because it was out of reach. You know, a lot of people do say that, oh, you know, yeah, you're never going to go up and be an author and make any money, so just don't do that. So it was kind of like that. I've always loved books and I've always loved writing. You know, I put in the acknowledgements of I Am Winter that my dad was called into school, primary school, when I was 7, because I literally used to read everything. You know, I could read before I went to school. And I used to read the newspapers, and I used to go into school and just write stuff that I'd read in the newspapers. And the teacher used to call my dad in and say, why are you letting her read this stuff? So yes, I've always loved books. I never considered being an author until my children, I guess, grew up, because, you know, I got married, I had babies, I've got 5 children. Went through quite difficult, and after that, after we came out the other side of it, I kind of sat down and said to myself, now's the time to do what you want to do. Your whole life doing what everyone else wants you to do, now do it. So I put my mind to it, and I've been writing since.
That's amazing. I think sometimes it's so kind of refreshing and nice to hear that you can get to kind of where you want, and it might not always be kind of the most straightforward road.
No, no, not at all.
Because I don't think there are many people that get to wherever they are in life, doing whatever they're doing in that nice kind of straightforward way that we're all kind of told as kids. Oh, go to school, do X, Y, and Z, and you'll get to X, Y, and Z. And I think it's nice to hear that.
Yeah, I would say very few people get to do it the way they want to do it. And, you know, you think back to when you're at school, how do you really know, when you're choosing your options at school as a teenager, how do you really know that that's where you're going to end up? You don't, do you?
No.
So, yeah.
Not. I don't think where I am now, if you'd have told me that when I was a kid, would have been like, really? I don't think I'd have quite believed it.
Exactly.
Another one is, if you could bring any character to life from your book, who would it be?
It would have to be Kofi, because he's just lovely. Yeah, he's just lovely. He was always there. He was always going to be Kofi. There was never any question of him being anybody else. And I think, again, he kind of dates back to when I was at school. And I was by no means one of the popular kids. You know, I was a real geek, and my dad was so protective, and I wasn't allowed to do anything, you know. And I had a friend just like Kofi. And yeah, I would love to meet him.
I always think that it's a really interesting question. I think even as a reader to ask yourself that question, because I think
Yeah,
sometimes the answers are really interesting as to why you'd want to meet a certain person from a book. I always think
yeah.
that it can be quite interesting to kind of think about that question. Um, we've got two more left, and
Okay.
the first of those is, what, if any, experiences have influenced your work?
I would say watching my daughters grow up. Um, yeah, we went through some tough times. My youngest daughter had a friend who was very similar to Summer Lion. Um, so yes, I think kind of watching the teenagers in that area, like it was just a concrete maze. I don't want to sort of bore you with details of my divorce, but we had nowhere to live. So I had 5 children, and we had nowhere to live, and we basically just found a house it wasn't a particularly nice area, but I needed to keep a roof over our heads. And some of the kids there weren't having the best time. And yeah, I think that was the biggest influence for Summer, definitely. Yeah.
And the final one is, what's your favourite thing about writing, if you have one?
Ooh. I can tell you what my least favourite thing is first, and that is
That's always an interesting one.
it's waking up in the morning and having dreamt in sentences. So as I'm dreaming, I'm actually writing the sentences rather than speaking them. So that's probably my least favourite. The favourite is watching the characters come to life. Yeah, it has to be. It's not even working out a plot. That can be really satisfying when you work out a plot point that you're like, oh, that would never have happened. How do I get around that? No, it's watching them come to life.
Yeah, I can imagine that that's really like satisfying and a little bit emotional, I would think. I mean, I'm quite an emotional
Yeah,
person. I think I'd find that quite an emotional experience, kind of watching these characters develop.
it is. And sometimes I read stuff back that I've written, and I'm like, oh, that's quite powerful. So that's a nice feeling as well, to be able to read something back and think, God, did I write that? So yeah, that's a good feeling. Sometimes you read it back and you're like, Jesus, what was I thinking?
Yeah, it's the balance of the two, isn't it?
Yes.
Sometimes it's going to be incredible, and I think sometimes you like to pretend that you didn't write that bit. That
Yeah.
that was just, I don't know where that came from. It wasn't me.
We'll hit the delete button on that bit.
Well, thank you so much for answering all of mine and the book group's questions, and
Thank you.
take part in this UK YA Author Week.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's been lovely. Thank you for having me.